Let's pray. All right, so Father, thank you for this day. Thank you for the opportunity that we have to come together, be with you, and just be able to just learn at your feet and have you change our hearts, minds, and encourage us and restore our spirits and just continue to remind us of what you've given, continue to give, and will yet one day call us home and then make all these things a reality, continuing to show more and more these things coming to a head until this point in which things continually change. We ask you to remind us of this change and in your creation and your restoration and your prophetic calendar, but also inside of our own lives, how you're changing us in our heart, mind, soul, spirit, everything that we have been given and brought through experience-wise and emotional and spiritual sense of things and physical issues. And Father, we just ask each and every one of the things that we are brought through or in the midst of or yet to go through, you would use it all to remind us of how we need to grow, just like Peter talked about, and you're continuing to inspire him to let us know that we must embrace the submission of all these things being used to submit to your will, that your power and your might would be shown through us and in us because of all these things, regardless of how it makes us feel and think at the time and what we experience. We know that you choreographed everything to work together for our good. We just want to trust and obey you more. We ask you continue to be our counselor, our guide, our teacher, our Savior, our pastor, our shepherd, and everything. We ask for each of the things that you give to us in our life and health and breath and everything that we have is we're grateful and thankful to you. Help us to be more obedient to you. Help us to embrace your love and forgiveness and restoration that you give to us and that you will bring to this earth and to the heavens. So we ask that you would continue to bless each and every one as we continue to walk through this understanding of your book of Second Peter and what's out ahead for us in the new earth and the new heavens. And we ask, Father, now that you would just continue to teach, guide, and direct us. May the words of my mouth, meditations of my heart be acceptable in your sight. For you are our Lord, our rock, and our Redeemer. In Jesus, Yeshua's name we pray. Amen. Okay, so
we have Lainey, Pam, Todd, and Vicki.
Well, hello, everybody. So we'll be looking forward to seeing you guys in a few days. Before you know it, we're up in Illinois with the wedding. So in reference to the lesson for today, it's the ongoing teaching of 2 Peter 3, but because of the teaching of 2 Peter 3, we've dovetailed off into Genesis, some passages in Psalms and other passages. And again, the reason why is because it's dealing with the new heavens and new earth. And he said, let not this escape you, which is let's not have this thing be something that you forget about. Let's not this be something that you unwittingly, ignorant, have truth elude you based upon this basic tenet. And I can tell you that this basic tenet is, there's a couple of things that I want to make sure that I think eludes a lot of people when it comes to Christendom and this particular epistle of 2 Peter. So first of all, I don't think people realize the time frame that it's written in lieu of what is being said. So a lot of folks know who studied the Bible that's written during the days of Nero and there's persecution. He was the first one to come after people. We've talked about that many times in Peter in the first epistle. But saying what he said, people miss that part about him saying, hey, submit, whether you fight the evil or whether you don't, internally you must submit because God's choreographing these things for the power of Christ to be in your life, to be made known. It's a hard thing to say to somebody in any given moment, but let alone when you're enduring pain and hardship and trauma and loss and physical, emotional, psychological torture. And Peter's in prison when he's writing this. At the same time, Paul was in prison. And then he writes second epistle a year away from being killed. And he kind of ups the ante and being more specific about a glorified body out ahead to be enduringly close to Christ. People, I think, miss that totally in Christendom. But more importantly, then he gets into the details of what is out ahead. And then remembering, he talked from the first epistle, remembering who you are, what's at stake, the minority of people that have been given what we've been given. And then he goes in the second epistle and reminds us the more specific details of the divine communion with Christ and the intimate relationship we have. And because of that, he's going to make his thoughts our thoughts. And he's going to just really change our bodies into being a glorified body, but not until day 8. But he talks about that being the future goal and getting ourselves in an assurance state of don't let things go to chance. Don't let things go to what if. Get the 100 fruit now and not worry about it and be a betrothed bride so that you can be declared as the bride in that day of inspection. He mentions that. You're going to make allusion to that in 2 Peter chapter 3 because he made reference to that in 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 12, by the way, when he makes the comment, when he says, I'll turn and read this to you, having your conduct upright among the Gentiles, 1 Peter 2:12, so that in what they may speak against you as evildoers from the good or callous works, which is out of your agathos disposition, outwardly callous works, which they behold, they may glorify God in the day of inspection. And that day of inspection is the day in which he's talking about in reference to the end of day 7, when the shoveling process, or the now inspection of the extra garment that you have made. You've been given a garment in the Ariston. Now you have to then make a garment, and then that garment is being inspected, as well as the other one you had to remain spotless. And he mentions how, again, we must have this looking intently into inspection day, which is what that word means, remember. So the day of inspection is God's looking intently into our sinless state that we've been given, and what do we do with this sinless state of opportunity to produce the extra fruit yields? Did we presume upon him? Did we have the extra measure of oil from which to make the 100 fruit? Did he already have the 100 fruit and got the extra 100 fruit? But that's what's in lieu of the first epistle. The second epistle, again, he's getting into more details, but then he goes into the last chapter, and he's really pulling back the onion, because then he begins to tell you he's been writing to the same group of people. But he waits until the second epistle, third chapter, to tell you that, which is really interesting. So he's veiling who the audience is until chapter 3, and later on in the letter, as the regular original writing would have it, there was no chapter breaks. So it wasn't until later in the letter he addresses who he's writing to, which is rather interesting, because he's veiling to the common person who's reading it. You wouldn't know. But since it's been delivered to these people, they knew, but the outsider folks would not know. So in other words, speaking to the microcosm of things that are hidden within what he's saying, I believe is reason why, principally why that is like that. He doesn't reveal who the audience is until later on. Yes?
Todd said the day of inspection is going into day 8
Yes.
for the Deipnon, correct?
Yes, that is correct. That is correct. It's the end of day 7. It's happening with the great white throne is happening on the earth. People always ask, well, where are the people in the heavens judged? At the day of inspection. That's in the heavens. So the day of inspection happens in the heavens by the Father. The judgment seat of Christ has happened the first part of day 7, the beginning. Then you have the day of inspection 1,000 years later at the end of day 7 in the heavens. Well, on the earth is the judgment seat of Christ, where Christ himself is judging those on the earth and under the earth. Those under and on the earth are being judged at the great white throne, whereas those in the heavens are being judged by the Father, or being inspected by the Father, I should say. Not judged, inspected. And then so there you have that. So and then the only consequence of that, or reality of that's going to be, either you enter the Deipnon, or you're cast out into outer darkness on the outside of the darkness of God's glory on the earth. So that's just how it's going to be. And so there's only two issues. Either you become part of the bride, consummated, declared, revealed bride, or you're exiled forever. There's only two choices. That's going to happen at the day of inspection. There's no option 3. That's it. So, and when you're outside forever. And we're going to go into some of that today about what that looks like, because it's going to be really a bad, oh man, you're going to regret that, because there's going to be a lot, well, for 1,000 years you will, then your memory's going to wipe clean, and you won't know. So it's really kind of odd. So yes?
Laney said, isn't that when Matthew 22 occurs?
Yep. When the inspection, when he says, "Where is this man without his garment?" and he's bound hand and foot, and he's muzzled. It's correct. And he says, "Many are called, but many are called out." And again, that's people say, "Many are called, few are chosen." That's your that's our tongue-in-cheek reference to that, but it should be stated, and I'll go back and show you this in 22:4 in verse 14. It's, you look on the left side of your margin. It's many are called kletoi, but few are ekkletoi, called out. The word is not chosen. Ekklego is chosen. Ekkletoi is called. So klego's chosen. Kletoi is called. You can't take ekkletoi and make it chosen. No, that's just a misnomer of English rendering. It's not. There is a chosen nature, yes, but that happens much lower in the rung. When you're given the sperma, you're chosen to see the silver, the intrinsic value of Scripture, which is the silver, mina, which is you're shown the intrinsic value. That's when you first have that light bulb go off, that you see truth within truth, and there's a inheritance and salvation difference. That's the silver. That's the chosen. You're a chosen one when you're given the ability, when God has given you the understanding, when God has opened up this head of yours, and you go, wow, in your spirit, there's a distinction between salvation and inheritance. The only way you could see that is if God chose you to see that. That's how you're chosen. What's the big deal being chosen? That's a big deal. Okay? So with that, after being chosen or given an invitation, a heavenly invitation, that's your invitation. So God sends you an invitation, because if you don't know the wedding exists, then how can you even have an opportunity to prepare yourself to go, right? How you know it exists is you have to know what's how to dress, right? And that's the salvation inheritance truth. It gives you the idea how to prepare for this wedding that you've been invited to, right? Because other people don't realize it's by invitation only. They think it's by anybody in Christ. Not true. So the chosen is a big deal. So then when you're chosen, out of those chosen folks, then there's called out people who are denoted by those who are of the 30, 60, 100 fruit. They're called out. They're part of the church called out. So you have to be a fruit yield of 30 minimum and above to be constituted amongst those who were chosen. Those who do 30, 60, and 100, those are the ekletoi. So for those who get mistaken of, oh, called out, chosen, same thing. No. No. There's many who are invited to the wedding. Only a few are part of the wedding party. We're going to have one of these this coming up weekend. You know, right? Not everybody who goes there is part of the wedding party. But are all not invited? Yes. So let's get real. So there's a distinction. We see that in our Western culture. And that comes from the original culture of what the Scriptures and the Eastern mindset, what that's written in. Okay? So I digress. So going back to 2 Peter in chapter 3. So he waits until the 3rd chapter, or again, later on in the letter, because there was no chapter breaks, to divulge to us that this is who he's writing to. Now, why, again, that seems like a no big deal thing, or like, what's the big deal? That's kind of interesting, but so what? You know, well, I think the so what is because the Scripture is always there for a reason, whatever happens and however things are recorded. I believe all my heart that God does that as a microcosm to show you that until you keep reading, you will not know the truth of what is already been disclosed by the original purpose and intent of how he said it and who he wrote it to. In other words, he had no intention of thinking it was written to anybody else. Peter knew it was written to the same people, but us reading it now, we wouldn't know that until chapter 3. So, or later on in the letter, or what we call the epistle. So therefore, the scriptural mandate of principle is God wants us to understand by the nature of that fact. He's showing you by a nature of fact. You have to keep reading. You have to put things together to understand the coherent whole of his message. If you just take, well, it doesn't say it right here at the beginning, then I'm not going to believe it. Well, that's just being arrogant and ignorant and just completely willfully ignorant. You can't just demand upon God to communicate to you the way you want to be communicated with. He's making it clear, stop your arrogance, stop your mandates against him, and just take what he gives you, how he gives it to you. And if he reveals things in secrecy, if he reveals things in later on progressive natures, then you as the student, you as the child, me as the subordinate, we have to just accept that and stop demanding on him or expecting from him what we think he should do because that's what Christendom has told me. That's what the seminary told me. That's what the pastor told me. God talks to me the way I want to be talked to. Really? Since when does that ever sound like that's a real subordinate way to act toward your creator and your superior God Almighty who your very life hangs in the balance by his very they just boom, you're done, right? So it's really interesting how we don't say we believe that way, but we sure do act like it when it comes to Scripture. Well, it doesn't meet the way that I want to see it, therefore I don't want to believe. But that's how God communicated it. It doesn't matter what you use your my interpretation. No. The facts are clear. Not until chapter 3, later on in the letter, as he disclosed who he's writing to. What do you take from that? It's simple. God did not want you to know who the audience was till later. Why? Because he doesn't want you to assume, just because he tells you later, that earlier on that wasn't true. Sure, it's true. In other words, he wants you to take a coherent whole into understanding when you see what he's saying, which is another microcosm of why Peter is saying, don't be ignorant, back in verse 5 of 2 Peter 3. Don't have this purposely escape you, which is the word lathano. Don't be unwittingly ignorant about the truth eluding you concerning that there heavens of old and the earth. How it was out of water, the restoration account, from the darkness to God's restoration, Genesis. Or when it came through water, Noah's flood. Because either way, he says, that then world was destroyed by that flood, the Noahic world, prior to Noah and after to Noah. Then he says in verse 7, but the present heavens and the earth by the same word are treasured up, being kept for fire, because they're both going to have fire applied to them, from which they come new again. But the new earth is the one that's being to a day of judgment, because it ends with the judgment seat of Christ, stop my mouth. The great white throne, pardon me. The great white throne at the end of day 7 is how the day of the Messianic reign ends. And that then begins the new earth. After that judgment has been done over all things, this is what everybody's yearning for, is a new earth. And then Romans 8, right? So they're yearning for a new earth and this redemption. The earth's going to be redeemed at that time. And then he's going to say, he says, also a day of judgment and destruction of impious men. Well, the day of destruction and impious men, remember, during day 8, there's still a lake of fire going on. There's a new earth, but there's not a new heaven yet. So the new earth's been new, but underneath it is still the same things that are there. It's just now under the new earth. But the reality is that underneath this earth, you have a new heaven later on in which destruction is going to have to take place of the heavens later on at the end of day 8. He's going to destroy the heavens and reconstitute that. So then you're going to have the heavens going to be also new again. We say, well, why aren't the heavens new in day 8? Well, because there's still going to be darkness and sun and moon and stars and that kind of thing in day 8. There's not going to be that same vision of that from day 9 forward. So day 9 forward, so to make sure we're clear on the board, I wrote this out so you can understand what I'm saying. On day 9 forward, the New Jerusalem leaves the earth. It leaves the earth, and then you're going to have the heavens light, no darkness, because that's the new heavens. You're going to have a new heavens, and on day 9, so the New Jerusalem is going to leave the earth and go out into this what we call space today. But you're not going to see a dark, like vast expanse. It's not going to be like that, because remember, God in Genesis, He created the heavens and the earth, and then it became darkness and voidless and formless. Well, that means it wasn't that way. And besides that, if you don't understand that part, God does not create things in darkness. He tells you that. I'm the Father of lights, he says in James. No darkness, no variance is from me directly. The only thing that can come to pass, because God's sovereign, is through an indirect venue, which is via Satan. So the reality is, he created it light, which means the heavens were not black. We talked about this before, the big firmament, the big expanse he made. If I just want to, and outside of time, God was just on his throne doing his thing, and he made a firmament, remember? He made a firmament, and it was all white. It wasn't black. And then it got darkened by Satan. Then he separates the firmament of the heavens, and then he has water. Then he has the firmament of the earth. This is already on the last chart. That's why I'm kind of doing this half-heartedly. And then he has water on the earth as well, right? With actual earth, with land. So you have the firmament of the heavens. Within a firmament, you have the firmament of the heavens, which is what we call now space. Then you have water, the ring around the earth, which is where the flood waters came from. Then you have the firmament of the earth, which we call the atmosphere. Then you have the water and land, which we call earth. And remember in Psalm 8:31, God said it was the world of his earth. This is the world of his earth. Remember that from Proverbs 8:31, he uses that phrase. It's the world of his earth. He creates a world of his earth. So earth's in the center of this. And remember, Sister Pam asked a great question. Hey, whoa, wait. Hey, where did the firmament come from? Because he says he made it. He didn't create it. He made it for the earth. So where did our atmospheric clouds come from and so forth? He took clouds from here and put them here. Yeah, you wonder why he takes a really prized treasure on earth. You wonder why he treats the entire Scripture. You wonder why people say, well, there's other life out there. I'm not saying there's not, by the way, other life out there. I'm not saying little green men. I'm not saying that. But God's other life out there that he doesn't want us to know about, and I don't think there's any evidence of us knowing about that kind of thing. But doesn't mean it's not true. I'm not saying that's, okay, so I'm saying two things there. I'm saying, yes, I do believe there's life outside of earth, but I do not believe that man has any evidence of that, nor has God allowed us to see any evidence of that. All that is just fictitious malarkey, just like evolution. It's all a stretching of what they want to believe and put to pass to feed into their narrative that God's not real. So that's all bogus malarkey. However, so when he does have other planetaries, we know there's galaxies out there. We know there's universes massive, right? So we always ask the question, why does God focus on just us in the Bible? Why has he not mentioned the people on Andromeda or whatever? Because he didn't use his own, before time, clouds of his heavens of his throne to actually create the firmament of the earth. We're kind of special, just saying. Okay? He used some things of his own dwelling to make earth, which is insanity, which is why we are a big deal. You go, what? Remember his breath? He went, and he breathed into us. His breath, holy mackerel, right? So we became us. So that's why he has an interest in us, because how he started us, right? So the same as the earth. So it's really atmosphere. Yes.
In the
No, exactly. Exactly. He created the heavens. That's exactly right. Heavens and the earth. And remember, God, in the beginning, God, like you just mentioned, as Nancy has said, He didn't say God created the galaxy of Mercury, Venus, and Milky Way, and Andromeda. He didn't say that. He just said heavens and the earth. And you gloss over that, but you got to realize, there was just a blank expanse of the heavens, and then there's this landmass, and He called it earth. That's it. No sun, no stars, no moon. What? It's insane. That's insane. Okay? That's insane. That's crazy. That's crazy. So, but remember though, but later on when He restores the earth, when He's restoring it, He does actually bring back sun, moon, stars in day 4, as if to allude to us. Remember, He's restoring what once was, so that means it was there before. So the world of His earth existed of this before. He just didn't mention it. Because remember, that's the key phrasing in Proverbs 8:31. There's the earth, but then God calls it the world of His earth. To remind you of that, you can go back to Proverbs chapter 8, and then you go, I'm turning now. What's your question or statement, Nancy? Sorry.
What exactly were the heavens originally in Genesis 1? What constitutes the heavens originally?
So the heavens, and so we're going to go back. So first, let me just read this real quick, and I'll get to that. So it's Proverbs 8:31, rejoicing in the habitable part, which is what it says in the King James, but it should say the world of His earth, and my delights were with the sons of men. So that's a phrase in the world of His earth. So your question is, in Genesis, the heavens originally God created the heavens and the earth. He created, what He's mentioned earlier, He created this before. He created this and this before, but it just wasn't dark. So there was space was light. It wasn't dark. There was a flood water. There was this, and there was this. The only thing different between what we see here and what God did in Genesis 1:1 was this wasn't black. It was light. That's all. It was light. But there was. So think about it. Were there stars in the heavens? Because he said in day 4 he made the stars. But if you go back to day 4, again, if you go back to Genesis chapter 1, going a little bit back and forth a little bit.
If everything's light, how do you see what the stars are? I mean, not though we were there, but what distinguishes the stars?
So he says in verse 14 of Genesis chapter 1, and God said, let there be lights in the firmament of the heavens, and divide the day and the night, and let them be for signs of seasons, for days and years, and let them be for lights in the firmament of the heavens, to give light upon the earth. Now, and he said He made the stars also in verse 16. God made 2 great lights, verse 16, greater light to rule the day and lesser light to rule the night. And He made the stars also. So He didn't create, He made these out of something. So it was out of the previous existing before. They were there before, and He made them out of that. So to your point, though, how do you see them? That's what I was going to get to also. So if everything's bright, and then this is one of the misnomers people have about, like, for example, if you're taking a picture of somebody, as we all know, in regular cinematography, you can't take a picture of somebody with too much light. You have to put that dark, what is the word for it? I'm not a person in cinematography, but there's a word you use for it in Hollywood-esque terms, that you would actually take a contrast to darken the background if it's too bright to see the person or the image you're trying to take a picture of. Because if you don't do that, then all you get is a big bright light on your picture. You don't get what you're looking at. You don't see it. So same thing too. So that means the stars were there. My point is the stars were there, but you couldn't see the distinguish between, like you're saying, you couldn't distinguish it from the expanse that was light and the stars giving out light. You couldn't distinguish. So what did God do? God basically, I mentioned before this in the previous lesson, when He was the light, days 1, 2, and 3, He just pulled back and allowed remember, He separated light from darkness, which is darkness is not opposite of light. It just means lesser light. So God just pulled back and let lesser light shine down, and then you could see the lights. But then He made the sun and moon. He just did the same thing with them. He just pulled them back and let the moon take forefront, so therefore it was a little darker, and you could see them come forth. It wasn't the same thing as when He was just the light, of course, pulling Himself back. But that's what I think happened there. I can't prove that to you. But to your point, there had to be something that you say, how do you see? But remember, when God restored it, He left the darkness there. So as far as no human has seen a lighted heaven. No one has seen that. Adam and Eve didn't see that. Remember, the heavens were still dark. So that's the way it was. So, but before that, Satan and his angels, fallen angels, they saw it, and they made it darkened. So they're the ones who saw it. Living things that saw it was just Satan and his minions. That's it. And we will see it in the future, but no one has seen that yet. But so I'm mentioning how that in a lighted heaven, that's how it worked. God just pulled himself back and then revealed more of that. Whereas now, you see it differently. Yes, sorry.
Pam had said maybe he sends them to begin another planet.
Who's them? When you say sends them, who's them?
The sun and moon.
Oh, I got you. He sends them over to, I got you, to another planet. Yeah, okay. So, I put on the side of the board.
She said at the end.
Yeah, at the end. Yeah, so here's the thing here. So the sun keeps the earth in orbit, by the way. It's interesting enough to say that. So here's the, by the way, so I want you to consider this. So God made heavens and the earth, remember? So I'm going to erase this on the board, if it's okay with you. I'm going to erase this right now. I'm going to continue to, this lesson plan, it requires me to draw, erase, draw again, because it's a constant moving thought process of what was, what is, and what will be. Hence my constant drawing and erasing of things on the board. But when you see like the earth and you got the sun,
she said it doesn't say he destroys them, right?
Well, we're going to look at that in just a minute. Tell you what, it doesn't. We're going to look at that in just a minute. I'll show you. So in the this is the sun, and you got the planets, right? So I'm not going to. Well, shoot fire. Okay, so you got Mercury and blah 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 blah. Okay, so we're the third one from the sun, right? Yeah. I can't remember right now. What's the first? Oh my gosh, Mercury. What's the other one? Venus. Thank you. Oh my goodness, what's wrong with me? Mercury, Venus. Okay. So, all right. So, sorry. I mean to make I know we're the third. I couldn't remember Venus for some reason. All right. So the point is, I'm not going to draw the other ones, but the point is, so we're like tethered. If I didn't spell that word. We're like tethered to the sun. So the sun holds the earth in orbit. So it's kind of like if you know, it's just like it's constantly, you're moving around. Like there's a rope to it. It's an imaginary rope of like gravity and just the gravitational pull and so on. So the sun is no longer, well then, hello, how does it stay in orbit? Well, it doesn't. It can't. It would just like, it just fall. What holds it in its cycle is the sun's pull on it, and then of course it rotates. But what holds it in its rotation is the sun. Without the sun, you don't have that, and NASA will tell you that. That's just the reality of it, right? So, the interesting part is, for those who go, okay, yeah, so what? Excuse me, God created heavens and the earth, and when He was restoring the earth was there, and it wasn't until day 4 He made the sun. So what kept the earth in orbit? God did, right? But how, right? I don't know. No one knows that. He just says, I got this. Well, okay. Well, in Colossians, he tells you in chapter 1 of Colossians, kind of makes more sense, and it gives more depth of, wow, yowza. When you go over to Colossians, in chapter 1, we've looked at this in the other past, we studied this book, but he says in verse 16, in chapter 1 of Colossians, because in Him were created all things, those in the heavens and those on the earth, the invisible and the visible and the invisible, whether thrones or dominions or governments or authorities, all things have been created through Him and for Him, and He precedes all things, and in Him all things have been permanently placed, or that means systemi, held together. They stand together because He holds it that way. So when people say, what holds the earth in orbit before the sun was there in day 1, 2, and 3? Easy. Colossians 1:17, the answer is Yeshua, Jesus, God the Son. That's what's up. You go, what? Well, I don't think. How do you do it? Because He's God. Why does He have to describe that to us? What mandate is He under to have to define to us how He does things? There's no mandate. He has to explain Himself to us. You know, we need to pipe down on that whole, I need to explain to me. Well, God doesn't explain everything to us, okay? He gives us what He gives us, and He just tells us, He holds it together. How He does that, I don't really know the exact details. We're going to continue to study, and maybe He'll show more of it to us. But it's interesting that we know now how he does it. Uses the sun to do it. Right? He holds it in place with the sun. How did he do it before? What did he use before? I don't know. Right? So here's the thing. The moon, by the way, affects tides. And when there's high tides and low tides, you'll see the moon a little closer and affects the tides. We all know this. But did you realize that when the tides are higher, as they are now, when the tides affect the rotational speed? So the Earth was moving, they claim on NASA's findings, they'll say, when you're studying astrology, they'll say, or astronomy. Is that right? Am I saying it the right way? Astronomy. Yeah, astronomy. So on astronomy, they'll say, okay, you have this study of knowing that the moon affects the tides, and therefore it affects the rotational speed of the Earth. And they say without the moon, the Earth would be spinning twice as fast, if not faster. If not 10 times faster, if not, so they say the days would be shortened to about 10 hours, there's no moon. So that you have ridiculous tides, and you'd have a day shortened. That's really interesting. So that's what the moon does. But here you have God saying, there's no sun, there's no moon till day 4, but yet I'm going to say there's 3 days. Okay. So, okay. But we know today that the sun and moon do these things, that he uses them to do these things. So what did he use before to do that? And other than himself, we know that, but what did he use, though? Because he's not exempt from using things. He uses us to do his bidding. He doesn't need to, but he does, right? He doesn't need the sun and moon, but he does use them. What did he use before? That's the question I'd love to know, what he used. I don't know that, but I think it's interesting to think about that he can do things opposite of what we today realize to be true. That's the point I'm making. You cannot sit there and say, well, because we need the sun and moon now to do this, therefore they always have to be in existence. Now, God showed you in the first 3 days he doesn't need them. What? Did the earth not thrive with life? Did he not put things on the earth? It says in there he has. Let's go back and read again. He has on day 1. He had, now to your point, he had life on the earth in day 3. If you remember, there was yielding of fruit. Think about that. So there was trees, grass, vegetables, and fruits before there was sun and moon. We say photosynthesis and things of this nature help to have the plant to grow. They need sunlight. Well, what did it have before to grow? So when you say, oh, we need, okay, you can say the sun holds it in orbit and heats the planet, and the moon affects the tides and affects the speed, but dude, man, without that, we don't have life, man. Well, that's not true. Because in day 3 there was life, wasn't there? Not human life, but there was life. Was there not? Sure. Grass, trees, vegetables, fruits. I mean, he tells you, right? Day 3, what's going on? So I think it's just rather interesting. God's pointing out that fact. I think it's rather interesting he does that. But we talked before about why God didn't do away with the darkness, remember? I mentioned before that God has to clean. So if you're the artist, and so you're the artist, and God is, and he makes the firmament, and then Satan darkens it all up, right? So what does God do? Now, me personally, I would have just been like, okay, I'm going to erase this. I would have done that. I would have erased what Satan did. Or I would have, okay, all right, fine. I'm just going to do away with this. I'm going to make a new one. But God didn't do that, does he? He says, no new one. Okay, all right, that's fine. And what about what Satan did, God? He goes, I'm just going to work with it. What? I'm going to separate, I'm going to make this part dark, and I'm going to just kind of work with this and take this one and make this light, and I'm going to separate light from darkness. But you didn't erase it. Why don't you just make a new canvas? Why not just erase the darkness? Remember that? We talked about it. That's a big deal. You just can't just skate over and go, no big deal. No. Big deal. Why do you not do that? We talked, remember before? Because, number one, he wants us to always remember that darkness is always going to be present in our lives as human beings until he comes and makes a new earth. He wanted to let us know that until there's a new earth and a new heavens, we got to deal with the darkness of the consequences and the memory of sin. Either the memory of sin or the consequences of sin will always be before us, and the darkness is a representation of that. It's the consequence and memories of sin, period, will always be there. So when the tears of heaven are no more in day 8, but there's still people in the lake of fire that are going to go through their unfortunate disobedience consequence. So you still have the consequence of sin taking place. Memory's gone, consequence is still there. Just like when the Garden of Eden was around. Did Adam and Eve know about Satan's previous rule and how he made it all darkness? Nope. But was the consequence there? Yes. It was heavens were darkened. They were under the consequence, but they didn't know about it. So there's evidence of no memory, but yet there was consequence of sin. Just like there'll be in day 8. There'll be no memory, but there'll be a consequence of sin still under the earth. No one will know about them except for those that are there. Just like no one knows about how Satan darkened the earth except for him and his minions, and God himself, of course. So I hope that makes sense. Yes?
Pam said if it were me, I would have done away with Satan too.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah, me too, right? So you think about that part of it. So then you go, okay, so God keeps darkness here to remind us, and I want to make sure I'll put that on the board so you don't forget this.
And Lainey said, explain again the no memory.
Okay, I'll put it on here. So God keeps the darkness as statement of fact. Sin's memory or consequence. Before us. So what I said by that was either one of the two is true. So in the Garden of Eden, here's a simple question. In the Garden of Eden, how would it be even possible, why is it even relevant, that Adam and Eve would have known about Satan and his minions destroying the earth before making it darkness? Mainly, he was the one accused of doing it, so they were with him. But where is it possibly noted that they knew about that? Nowhere. Why would they need to know that? They wouldn't. They wouldn't. Because why? They were made sinless, in a sinless state, and they were told, just do these things. Till the garden, cleave to your wife, obey me. It's not that hard to understand. Pretty straightforward. Just don't do this and do this. That's it. They didn't need to know. Just listen. Follow the instructions, right? So they had no memory of the darkness of how it got there. But they were under the consequence of that darkness because the heavens were darkened. When they looked up at night, they saw the stars, to Nancy's point. They saw the stars. They saw the planets. They saw the galaxy they lived in. They could tell that there was a dark, vast firmament up there with all these lights at night. They never questioned that it was dark. They didn't think to even know that. They just accepted the reality they were given. But if they would have known before that the heavens were light and it became darkness, they'd have probably been like, say they did know that. They would still go like, okay, that's interesting. But they wouldn't know what happened because there's no evidence that they were told that. They just know that it exists as a consequence of sin. So my point being that darkness, again, is a statement of fact that sin's memory is there or consequences are before us. Just like in day 8, the memory of sin is wiped away. Remember, it says when we go to heaven in day 7, there will be no more crying. There will be no more tears. There will be, future tense. That'll happen in day 8, when there's no more movement. You're done. At that point, you can't inherit earth or inherit heaven. Whatever you are is who you are. With the only different distinction being those in the lake of fire who have their portion, right? Those who have their portion like a fire, they will then come out. Revelation 21:8, I believe it is. They're going to come out after that time, and they'll just be on the earth. But the reality is, there's no memory for us during day 8 that there's this people in the lake of fire. But there is going to be a memory of the smoke rising for the ages of ages, remember? For the people who took the mark of the beast and worshipped him. Oh, that's different. There's a memory of that constantly. It says, that's what it says, forever and ever. But it says that's rising up to the heavens. But yet it says in day 8, we don't have any memory of sins wiped away from us. So there's a consequence, but not the memory.
That's when Isaiah, at the end, comes to pass and says the former things will not be remembered, nor will they come to mind. That's day 8.
Yeah, that's day 8. You don't remember. God's going to wipe away your memory of all the sin. And he's going to wipe away all the sin. There's still going to be darkness involved, so there's a consequence, but you just won't remember. But when darkness goes away altogether, then there is no more consequence and there is no more memory of sin for us at all. So for those in Christ, for those that are in His Spirit, we don't have any consequence or memory of sin after day 8. It's all over. We don't have any There's none of that because the heavens are made light. There's no more darkness. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
So, okay, the beginning of day 8 is when the 4 things don't come to mind.
Correct.
Okay, and the end of day 8 is when that smoke and...
Is when the consequence of, in other words, the memory will be wiped away already, but the consequence of it, I'm actually, it says for the ages of the memory of the smoke will rise up, correct? But that consequence won't be, that'll be for a sin, but not for a sin of those that were of God or in Christ. That's for a different group of people. Remember, those people that have the smoke rise of ages are the ones that are none of covenant or in testament at all. That's what those people are, remember. Those who take the mark of the beast and worship him, or not, they can't be in Christ, there's no way. And they're not going to be of God either. They're going to be people that are actually neither one of those things. So they're not believing in the God of covenant or that God is Jesus in testament. They're rejecting both of those things. And so,
They were destroyed in Jehoshaphat.
no. That correct. So they belong there. They should have gone there. So to your point, so of all those, I'm going to call it an ignorance of covenant, God, or in testament in Christ. So all those that are in ignorance, they're not of the covenant, they're not in testament, right? So they all deserve to be destroyed. It's just that the majority of them will be in Jehoshaphat, to your point, Jehoshaphat, right? But there's a few, and they have to be alive during tribulation. So if they weren't alive in tribulation, that's why if you're going to be a person who's not a covenant believer or a testament believer in God or Christ, you don't want to be alive in tribulation. That's the worst time to be alive if you're a person who rejects Christ and the God of the Bible. Because now you're subjected to having the worst possible outcome that could happen to you. Not to Joseph, that happens to everybody else who's not before that time, who is alive during that time. They're going to be in bad shape because now they have to endure. They're more than likely going to take the mark of the beast and worship him. And when they do that, God's going to go, oh, you get worse than Jehoshaphat. I'm going to put you exactly where Satan and the false prophet and the Antichrist are going to be, and I'm going to have your smoke rise to the ages of ages because that just incenses me that you would actually think that I'm him. That's different than rejecting me. Now you rejected me and you upped the ante and said I was Satan. That's a little rejecting him is one thing. Not believing in him, not living right, all that stuff is one thing. But when you assert yourself and you say that this is my God, this is the God that created me, and it's Satan, he takes that personal. You're attributing, that goes back to one of the 10 commandments. Do not take my name in vain. Don't say something about me that's not true. You can hate me and not like me and all that kind of stuff and live differently and live rebelliously. He deals with that differently. But when you actually say that he is Satan, oh boy, it's a whole nother level of like DEFCON 5 to him. God just goes, oh no, you did not. Oh no, you didn't. You do that there's literally, we say hell to pay. There is like a judgment to pay for that. It's not funny. Yes.
So, let me get this straight. If they weren't living through the tribulation, even if they were Satanists in a previous age,
Doesn't matter.
Anton LaVey, I mean, he would wind up in Jehoshaphat rather than...
Correct. Anton LaVey, the guy who started this Satanic church, would end up in Jehoshaphat. But because why? Because he did not physically have Satan in front of him doing miracles and performing things and then saying, and he didn't actually say that he is God. He worshipped him in a spiritual way, in a mindset way, psychological way. This is a personal, he took a mark of the beast. They take a mark in order to do commerce, and they actually worship him as God. And in other words, they have all the difference is Anton LaVey is in a time of sin where you could be constituted as being one who's confused possibly. But during this time, you have two witnesses telling you he's a liar. Remember, Moses and Elijah are saying he's a liar, he's a liar, he's a liar. False prophets lie and lie and lie. Then they get killed. In the next half of tribulation, he reveals himself as the beast. And yet, even with that, you take the mark. He takes up an image and everything and says, look, see, he makes it talk. So when you start saying Satan is God, but then you start building an image and you see it talk, you're supposed to know. Come on. So would Anton LaVey have still believed in Satan if he had a stone image get erected and start talking? And after all the carnage that he did, would he still believe? I don't know. Maybe it's different. God's just saying that in that environment, those folks are judged more harshly because they were given, I think what he's trying to say is, they're given faith and sight. They're given the ability to see that this is the real Satan that you think he's nice and kind to you. Look, he's killing people. And you still say he's your dad? You still think he's the creator? Then that's it. You even sense me beyond belief. That is beyond, you're going to have a price to pay for that. That's different than being a person who worships Satan now, not seeing him physically manifested in his evil. But you see that, and you still say he's the guy? How could you? That makes no sense.
And they almost like they're unfortunate they were even born to live in that time. They'd have been better off living centuries past.
I know, and God talks about that in 2 Peter about people who didn't, it's better not to know Christ than to know Christ and go like a dog or a pig back to your old ways, the vomit or the mire, right? So it's similar to that. So it's better to be an ignorant person, not in the time of Satan, than being in the time of Satan on the earth and being an ignorant person. It's worse, because now you're held more accountable, because you're in a time where he's been made manifest. Yes, sorry, online, apologize.
Todd said sovereignty
Yep.
previously, and then Lainey said ultimate of blasphemy.
Yes, the ultimate blasphemy. It is sovereignty, it is. So it goes back to your Nancy's statement and Todd's statement. It's a sovereign thing. It's just like saying, why weren't we born? Why wasn't my soul put inside of a child back when the days of Nero were going on and the people were being killed? Why was I born into my family? So when you start thinking about sovereignty and a gamut of world history, past, present, and future, then you can't avoid the issue of, wait a minute, take it more exacting into the family you were born in, the genealogy that you have, the ethnicity that you have, the personality trait that you have. All of a sudden, that's a little bit more personal. It's the same thing. It's the same thought process. You're just taking it from a wider scope and narrowing it down. The sovereign act of God to make you who you are, when you are, where you're associated with, is all in his. You didn't choose any of that.
Yeah, we could have been among the children sacrificed in the Old Testament.
No, exactly. I could have been a guy on the long side of the road when the Romans were coming through, and I went, Yeshua, and he chopped my head off. Why wasn't I don't know. It's amazing. Why am I alive today? It's just, that's why some people believe in this Hall of Souls garbage, and I choose when to go into time when I feel like it, and I go, oh, boop, I'm in that body. That's just insanity. People believe this stuff, by the way. Not true, but they believe that kind of malarkey to explain this kind of thing, because they don't want to have God's sovereignty be the answer. They want to have man be the answer, so they have to concoct, how can man be the answer? Oh, I know, there's a Hall of Souls, and we get to choose what body to jump into as a fetus and become whatever we want to be. That is just insane. That makes man in control, which is totally ignorant. God's in control all the time, every day, all day, twice on Sunday. It's just all the time. Yes?
Vicky said, do you have any idea about why God created and placed the grass and plants on earth before the sun and moon and stars? Did you say already and I missed it?
Well, there's a couple things. Well, I'm glad you brought that back up. Bring us back to the full circle. So the reason why I brought that up in Genesis before is to answer your question is, why did God do that before there was sun and moon? Because remember, we know today that plants need to have photosynthesis. They need to have the sun. You can't just put a plant and have no sunlight and have it live. It's going to die. It needs sunlight. So, but people say, well, it had light though, because there was light and darkness, and the light was God. But the real point is, why did God put grass, plants, trees, vegetables, fruits? Why did he flowers, all of that? Why do you have all that living on the earth before sun and moon and stars? And so my particular take on this is because here's the thing. It goes back to, I want to segue into this about the darkness though. Get back to darkness. So the darkness, the reason why God didn't erase it off the canvas or make a new canvas, because he could have either one. He could have had a new canvas, no darkness, a new artist canvas, or he could have just got rid of the darkness on the same canvas. He chose neither one. He chose to keep the darkness and just separate it with having light shine on the subject. But remember, to segue into that, in day one, when he separated the darkness is in lieu of the water covering the land. And so the depths of the waters were so dark when the light shined forth, it was lesser light down deeper. Which, wait a second, the water in Scripture is always a metaphor to the water of the Word. So why would he associate the depths of God's Word, which are where his secrets are, where his mysteries are, where the depths of his person are? Why would he have that somehow conveyed with darkness? What does that have to do with that? What? God's not darkness. Well, the point there is not that God's darkness, but the deeper you go in God's Word, the deeper we are shown mysteries and secrets of God and his character. What happens to us? Come on now. What did Paul say at the last part of his life, last year to live, when he wrote to Timothy? The Lord saves sinners, of which I am chief, the worst. So the deeper you learn about God, the deeper you go with God, like Solomon's Ecclesiastes, he says the whole matter of things is this. Paraphrase, we're going to get judged for how we live, folks. What we think, what we say, what we don't think, what we don't say, what we don't do, what we have done. So Solomon, the wise man in the Old Testament, Paul, the wise man in the New Testament, both said at the end of their life, you know what, the more I know about God, the more I realize the darkness of my sin, the disparity of the depravity of my humanity. And I realize I'm not good. That humanity's not good. You may think I'm a good dude. I'm not a good dude. I'm a bad human compared to what I know about God. The more I delve into God, the more dark I see of myself. And that's why he's made the waters. I'm going to get into the question about the green. I just want you to see the segue. So in day one, when he makes light separated from darkness, it's interesting how he's showing that. He's showing the deeper you get into his word, you get lesser light on the subject, meaning you have lesser of the general light, but you see more of the shades of light in that darkness, because your darkness, you're finding out about yourself. You're seeing how dark you really are. But most people want to stay on that surface, and they don't want to get involved in seeing how dark they are. They don't want to talk about their darkness of their sin. Matter of fact, I told you before I was in a Bible study, and I mentioned just the word accountability, and from that, a guy jumped to a conclusion and said, I live in a condemning, hellfire and brimstone, sin, guilt, shaming mentality. What? I don't, because I said the word accountability, and I said the phrase, the judge seat of Christ will have to be, before him. He took that from those statements. I'm like, what? And it was just amazing how he was just don't bring me to the point where I have to pay a price for, who I am. Christ paid the price on the cross. I go, I know he did. I'm just saying that we have to live right, and that's all. There's a consequence for you lack of living right, a reward for living right. You don't get separated from Christ in the sense of what you're talking about. You just have a consequence, a reward therein. He didn't want to go with that. So the point is simply that's number one. Number two is we talked before about how God called a day like a puzzle piece. And in Psalm 90:12, he says, let us number our days and wisdom, right? I'm going to get to your issue, and I'm not avoiding it. I'm just building up to it. So he says, remember, I told you before, the puzzle piece theology, the idea, each of our days is a puzzle piece to a jigsaw puzzle. And in Psalm 90:12, he tells us, teach us to number our days for wisdom's sake. You see God's wisdom in it, right? Interesting. And so as you go forward, then we find out that I told you before about, okay, wait a minute, God says evening and morning is the first day, but that wasn't a 24-hour or any time issue, was not the issue there. The issue was the artist had finished a frame of work, and he signed it first day, he found it God and named it first day. So he called his finished work a day. So you can't rename his finished work. I didn't do that work, neither did you. So we have to call it what God calls it. So each day of our life is a finished work of God. So therefore, you have to take each day, whether your life, whether you experience good or bad, or how you feel. Remember, we mentioned that before. That's a puzzle piece. That's an artwork finished by God. That day that comes and goes is a finished work. Yesterday was a finished artwork of God, perfect in his masterpiece. You say, well, I had a bad day yesterday. You may have experienced a bad day. I'm not saying you didn't. But the reality is that you may experience a great day, and that's great. But either way, God's artistry was in that day. And do you take it as that? And do you log it? And the more of those pieces you put together, you start to see light separated from darkness. If you don't put puzzle pieces together, if you don't put your days together, the number of your days, if you don't put those together, you're not going to see the light from the darkness. You're going to see there's too much light or too much darkness. You're not going to see the contrast and the scope of what God's doing in your life, right? So thirdly, then we talked about why did he start off with evening, then morning? Remember we said, well, God wants to start with what's disgusting and ugly in our lives, and let us know he always ends with being the light. He's a refresher, restorer, regenerator. But think about this. What do we do at night? We go to sleep. So why do you start off with a sleeping state and it ends with light, which is an awakened state? Think about that. So what is God saying to us as well? So he's going to be the one. So we have to go through a stupor. We're going to be in a stupor. Remember how Paul says it in 1 Corinthians 13? We see now through a glass dimly. But later on, it's going to be revealed to us. We don't. It's like opaque. When Babes had her cataract surgery done, the eye doctor said on one eyeball it was like a snail went over her eye and went and left a sludge mark. I'm like, what? That's how she was seeing. Not anymore, but was. And the other eye, it was like a fractured, like a bunch of shattered glass. I'm like, talk about seeing dimly and seeing weirdly. Yeah, psychedelic like a fly over here, and then like a smudge, foggy haze over here. So, but now all clear. And babe, it feels better, right?
Yes.
So the reality is, you know, we see that in just in a small microcosm of our own vision. But imagine spiritually wise, we see things dimly when we first are made by God on this earth. We think we're enlightened creatures. We think that we're so spiritual, and we see things dimly. We don't understand fully. So God wants you to know, I don't care what family you're born into, whether one of abuse, whether one of indifference, whether one of spiritual wonderfulness, either way, you're still born in an evening state, in a sleeping state. He has to waken you up. He has to show you that light. He has to be that light in your life to shed on your darkness that you're born into, to let you see the light of His life and the purpose of Him shining light on your darkness, right? But then also, now we get into what he goes in day 2, and he makes the land appear. Remember, he takes that curtain of the water, remember that? And the land appears, and he separates the waters, and then he makes the firmament as well, the heavens, right? So he makes firmament, dry land appear, and then he does all that to show you what? To show you the dynamics of the distinction between a firmament and the firmament of the heavens from the firmament of the earth and the waters and how they were separated. Well, why was that important? Because he wants us to know there is duality of firmaments, there's duality of waters, and because land is separated by these pockets of waters in between them, he's letting us know that there's what we would call today in spiritual terms dispensations. There's movements of how God moves, same principles, but changes how He deals with us throughout time. Why did God make different firmaments and different sections of water on the earth? To show us that water has different segmentations on the earth. He said that. He gathered into places. We call them seas, right? So later on in day 3, then without the sun and moon, to answer, now you answer your question now, Vicky. So why did He make the grass and all that grow? To show us that, remember what the Apostle Paul said in 1 Corinthians 13 when they said, oh, I belong to Apollos, or I belong to Paul. And Paul says, and I can turn there and show you to remind you of this, so I'll tie it all in. So Paul says in 1 Corinthians 3, as they're making this statement, Paul says in verse 6 of 1 Corinthians 3, I planted, Apollos watered, but God causes it all to grow. So that neither the planter is anything, nor the waterer, but God causes all things to grow. So God wanted to do that for the very purpose of showing you He wants nothing to be used in between your growth and Him. Not me, not some other book. He wants it to be you and Him, home cooking. That's why He made the grass to grow. That's why He made fruits and vegetables. That's why He made trees and plants and flowers. Because He wanted you to know, guess what? Hey, pay attention. Was there a sun and moon? Nope. Who made it grow? Boom. God did. He's like, exactly. As it should be in your life. Know this. I will use other things, granted, as I did from day 4 on. I used the sun and moon to help the plants, granted. But before that, what was my intent? I wanted to be the direct source of their growth. Just like I want to be that in your life, son and daughter, child of mine. That's what He wants. He wants you and me to understand that. He wants a personal, direct connection. Direct, not indirect. He wants a direct connection. He wants you to know He's intimately involved in helping you to grow. He'll use other things, other people. Absolutely He will. That's why day 4 on, He shows you He does do that. But He wanted to make it clear from day 1, from day 3 I should say, from point 1 on day 3, what caused things to grow? He did. Was there a sun? No. How did plants grow? God. So what's He saying to you? He directly is the cause of growth. And that's what Paul said also. Doesn't matter who plants. Doesn't matter who waters. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. God causes it all to grow. But in God's case, God planted on day 3, God watered on day 3, and God caused it to grow on day 3. Goodness gracious. As if to show directly He was the one that gave you home cooking. So that's the best way to learn about God. That's the best way to learn about your framework of Scripture, is directly from God. Because when you get it directly from Him, it's fantastic. Does that mean He can't use other things in people? No. Does that mean it's wrong when He does? No. It just means it's better when He uses it one-on-one with you. That's all I'm saying. He wants you to know it's always better and more treasured when it's you and Him. It always is. You know that. Come on. Right? So, sorry, yes.
But I was saying the fruits of the Spirit. I mean, it's fruits of the Spirit. I mean,
Yeah. Oh, it is. Yeah. So I think we're getting off topic, but I hope it's been helpful. I hope it answered your question, Vicki. I hope it answered your question. I led into it, but I wanted to make sure we understood that. So hope you're good.
Yes.
Okay. So then he goes. So I'm gonna go back to. Let's go to this Old Testament verses here. So turn to Isaiah. So here's Psalm 90, verse 12. You can go there. I can read it to you. Psalm 90, verse 12, and he says, "So teach us to number our days, that we may apply our hearts unto wisdom." And again, this means a whole lot more to me now that I know that puzzle piece of our lives theology based upon Genesis understanding of why he called it a day. Boy, Psalm 90:12 really becomes a new favorite verse of mine. Matter of fact, when we go to Gatlinburg next year, I'm going to have that etched in stone, and literally, they have rocks you can etch scripture into stone. This guy does that, and we bring those home. So I'm going to have that one. It's just such a big deal to me. So I'm definitely having that etched in stone. That is ridiculous. That is outstandingly ridiculous. I love that verse. From now on, I always knew, but not that I know it the way I know it now. It means a whole lot more. Okay, because remember, I personally, I was telling this to people at work and on the phone and whatnot. So I talked to. I said, imagine in the next life when your daddy, your God, your Creator, your Father, your Redeemer, everything, and he goes, "Hey, son, daughter, what'd you do with your life that I gave you those pieces?" You go, "Pieces? What do you mean?" "With all days of your life, since you lived 10,642 days, show me your puzzle pieces and how you put them together." Puzzle pieces? What are you talking about? Or is your response going to be, "Oh, yeah, every day matters. I remember. I got a framework." That's all you got? Or, "Oh, another response. I got a framework and I got a corner going on here. But I see a lot of darkness here, God." And he goes, "Because you didn't put all the pieces together, son, daughter. I gave you a lot of pieces. You used like maybe less than 2%. And that's all you got. So let me show you what it looks like." And you go, "Wow." He goes, "Yeah, now that you know what it looks like, I took away sin, no encumbrance now, took away the encumbrance, and I gave you what the final state looks like. I gave you what the end of mind looks like. I want you to get now back to work and reevaluate in your mind all those days that you discounted. I want you to now go back and reevaluate and see how I got here. I want you to understand it on your own. I want you to come to that own self-discovery. Now that you know what it looks like and there's no more sin to distract you and delude you, I want you to in heaven now to work on this. Work on this. See the process of how I got you to where you are. See it, know it, believe it, embrace it, believe it." And so to me, it's amazing. So anyway, so in Isaiah 24, is there something I missed, babe? Sorry.
Todd just said, "Nancy, more rocks."
Oh, more rocks. See, he's talking to you, Bobby, babe. He's saying more rocks, meaning out of scriptures probably. I'm going to put on rocks.
I know.
He's being funny. Okay, so Isaiah 24 in verse 23, he makes a comment about the Lord himself. He says, now watch this now. It says, this is interesting let's go back to the sun and the moon issue before when you mentioned, will he do away with them? Now we're going to get involved in that conversation. I haven't forgotten about Sister Pam's comment and question there. Isaiah 24, verse 23. "Then the moon shall be confounded, the sun ashamed, when the Lord of hosts shall reign in Mount Zion, and in Jerusalem, and before his ancients gloriously." So when he says gloriously, the Mount Zion he's talking about is the day 8 when he reigns in the heavens. Because he rules heaven and earth in day 7, but he reigns from earth. But in Isaiah 24:23, he's telling you he's reigning in Jerusalem, and he separates this and says, and in Mount Zion, because we know in Jerusalem, physically speaking, Mount Zion's a high elevated plain in Jerusalem. But why would he say both? Because he's doing a word picture for us in a spiritual metaphor of Jerusalem, earth, and Mount Zion, which is the heavenly, the new Jerusalem. This is like the new Jerusalem. So he wants to tell you he's reigning day 7 in Jerusalem, and he's reigning day 8 in Mount Zion. And he makes the sun and moon blush. Well, it says, more importantly, it says in verse 23, the moon will be confounded, which means blush, and the sun will put to shame. Meaning his light will be a lot greater than that. So they won't be needed as much. They're going to be there. It didn't say they weren't going to be there, but it makes a comment that they're not going to be in the same, no pun intended, the same light. It'll be different. He just makes it clear to you. When he's reigning in Jerusalem or in mountains, either one, it says the moon is confounded or blush, and the sun is put to shame. So you're like, well, what? So the context there is clear. When Christ is on the earth or in the heavens, the sun and moon change the dynamics of their effects of what the light they bring to the earth. That's a fact, because it says it right there, which is really interesting to me. But now I can put together more scriptures, and I'll show you more things that speak to this issue about the sun and the moon and where they play a part. So let's look further. So let's go back to the Psalm again. And let me show you the triptych, because we're going back and forth, because the whole context is 2 Peter chapter 3 and verse 7, when he said that the present heavens and the earth by the same word are treasured up, being kept for fire or into fire, to a day of judgment and destruction of impious men. And verse 8, let not this one thing escape you. This one thing. He says, let this one thing escape you. Escape you, meaning, again, don't be ignorant to it. Don't be, don't the truth elude you. That the day of the Lord is 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is one day. Then in verse 9 he says, the Lord of the promise, which is the promise given to the 100 fruit, that you'll have that precious faith promise, as he mentioned back in chapter 1, to be, once you're a betrothed bride, that means you're secured to be revealed as the bride later. So he says, he's not slow with the promise, as some regard slowness, but he is patient, makrothumio, toward us, meaning long-suffering, not wishing or not belumai, not desiring internally that anyone should perish, but that all should come to reformation, or metanoia. In other words, turn to God. He wants all of us who are going through a traumatic state, who are the ekletoi, the called out ones who are 3,600 fruit people. He wants all of us to be reformed and repented up, so that when he comes, we're not found, given all we've been given all the life that we've lived, given all the obstacles that we've come through, being all the things that God's bestowed upon us. He doesn't want the situation, the experience to overcome us and take away and rob us of what he wants us to have. He wants to wait and wait and wait and wait and wait till you and I get our act together, so we can live in accordance to how he desires us to be, to partake of all these blessings. Yes?
Pam said Mount Zion is the earth and Jerusalem represents the heavens. Is that what you said? Or
No.
is Mount Zion day 7 and Jerusalem day 8? I missed it.
That's okay. So I'm saying Jerusalem right here. Jerusalem is day 7. Jerusalem is day 7. And Mount Zion represents the city on a hill within Jerusalem. So it represents the elevated part of Jerusalem, which represents the New Jerusalem, the elevated part of Jerusalem, which is New Jerusalem in the heavens, which is day 8. So Mount Zion represents which is physically elevated within Jerusalem proper. And then you have the New Jerusalem is actually elevated, obviously, above Jerusalem, because there's a Jerusalem literally on the earth, and there's a New Jerusalem in the heavens, right? Just as there is a Mount Zion in Jerusalem, but it's elevated above Jerusalem. So it helps to maybe see that, what I'm saying. So when you see that context, go now to the flow of thought from Psalm 90, verse 2, about this heaven and earth and this created restoration and all this. Let's Psalm 90, verse 2. Before the mountains were birthed, or ever thou hast formed the earth and the world, from everlasting to everlasting, you are God. Whoa, what? So you see, before the mountains were birthed, when were they birthed? In the restoration. You say, what? Remember, when God took the blanket of the water and the land was shown, then he gathered the land into its places. Remember, he had peaks and troughs there. He created, we talked about in Jeremiah, some higher hill areas. He had hills and higher hill areas. Now, mountains today are thousands of feet high in this up from land, but that's not what it was at the time. He birthed mountains that were higher to let the waters go into their gathered places. But that was because of the restoration. So the mountains were birthed during the restoration, but not mountains as we know today. They're mountains that were a lot smaller then than they are now. Then you have Noah's flood and Psalm 104. In Psalm 104 and and this is how you know the mountains weren't as tall as they are now, is because of what happened post-Noahic flood. So when I say, I still say to the statement, there was no mountains, I mean, we call a mountain today. What we call a mountain today is things that are like thousands of feet in the air. So like, what is it, Mount Everest is like 29,000, Lane told me yesterday. So the reality is you have all these mountains that are thousands upon thousands of feet in the air where the air goes thin. They didn't have mountains like that back in the pre-Noatic world. They had mountains there was landmass that was higher. There was hills, and there was landmass higher than hills. But there was no mountains as we call mountains today. They called a mountain back then a landmass higher than a hill. That's all. It wasn't thousands of feet high. That's what we call it today. It's all relative. And you know that because of the deduction of Psalm 104. Look at Psalm 104 and read verses 6 through 8. Well, actually, verse 5, we read that too. Who laid the foundations of the earth that it should not be moved or totter. We talked about this before, that the earth, when he first made it, was not moved. But then later on, it moved, and he'll make it again where it won't move. We already talked about that in the past, right? And then he says, in verse 6, thou coverest it with the deep, and with a garment the waters stood above the mountains. But he says in verse 7, at your rebuke they fled. At the voice from your thunder they hastened away. They go up by the mountains, they go down by the valleys unto the place which you have formed them. Another way of saying that in some translations, what he's saying is he rose the mountains and sunk the valleys. So therefore, you had a hill. So before, just going to make sure we're clear on this. So you had a hill and you had a mountain before, right? And you had water, and this, say, is a valley here, right? And you had water. So water was gathered into its place in Genesis, but a mountain was higher than a hill. But then God has the whole waters over the whole earth, right? Over the whole earth. Noah's flood. And what's he do? He raises the mountains and he sinks the valleys. By doing that, how could you possibly sit here and tell me the mountains were the same height they were before? That makes no sense. Of course they're higher now. He rose them up, man. Okay? Come on. So he rose the mountains up and he sunk the valleys. The waters were above and he rose these up and he sunk these down and he displaced it. The water and the clouds cannot hold it all, and hence you have bigger masses of seas. So the waters that we see today are a lot larger than they were pre-Noatic flood. So just like Nancy asked me, did the earth move in Noah's day prior to the flood? No, because God said he made it not to move. So what made it move? When he shook the earth right here, when he went kaboom. And that's why when you go to the Grand Canyon, which we've been in a helicopter ride, they'll show you the oversight of it. And they'll say, look, right there was like an earthquake. It seems like evidence of it because there's a shifting of the ground where it was. And I said, could that be from just basically saying, in other words, would it raising a landmass and lowering a landmass create an earthquake? He goes, well, of course. Well, then you just said that was an earthquake that caused this landmass to be separated from this other rock formation over here. Well, that's no different than me saying if I was a superhero and I could raise this landmass and reduce this landmass, then that would be the same as creating an earthquake. And he goes, well, of course. I go, well, then that's what happened in the Bible because God said that. And God is a superhero, just so you know. So he's like, oh, so there's no difference in how that is, but there is a mountain, but mountains are a lot higher now. Okay? So I hope you understand that. So now when he does this, he tells you this, but then as you continue to read, now that's the Noatic flood. Now look at the Messianic reign. Let's go to Isaiah 40. Now watch Isaiah 40. People know that verse pretty much, but they don't want to look about this verse. This is where God goes back. We've been talking about the earth changing. About the earth right now, it's moving, it's rotating, it's also orbiting the sun. It's moving itself, rotating, and it's also orbiting the sun, right? It's moving two different ways. It's moving itself, and it's also going around the sun. It's just doing that, right? So then he says in chapter 40 of Isaiah, verse 4, this is the renovation of the earth, kind of a restoration, but renovation of the earth. In verse 4, every valley shall be exalted, and every mountain shall be made low. Well, that's just the opposite, right? Hello? So what's he saying? He's making it back to a pre-Noatic flood state. He just told you that. By the very nature of knowing what he said in Psalms where the water went, now he's telling you he's making it different. Well, that means there's going to be more landmass and less water during day 7. He's going to make it like it was before. And the crooked ways are made straight and the rough plains. And the glory of the Lord, which is actually it's a bad translation, it should say the honor, the beauty, the splendor of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh will see it together, for the mouth of the Lord has spoken it. So it's talking about the Lord reigning on the earth. He's going to renovate the bad boy by lowering the valleys. I mean, raising the valleys and lowering the mountains, whereas here he did the opposite. You're like, what? So how can you avoid that when it's right there in front of your face? So it's right there. Yes?
Oh, just letting you know, Jim joined.
Okay. Hey, Jim? So in Psalm, he says he rose the mountains and sunk the valleys. But over in Isaiah, he says the opposite. Is he contradicting himself? No. God doesn't do that. We do that. I do that. But he doesn't do that. So which means the only conclusion we could make is both are true, which we know for a fact. God is always he is the truth, which means the time frame from which he did this is different. And we know that clearly to be Noahic flood, how the waters were dispersed. And now we go, wait a second. But if he changes that, then we go back to this part, and he says the earth was not made to move. That means when he's lowering the mountains, that means the earth's not going to move again. Uh-oh. So there's no more rotation, right? And there's no more going around the sun. So now we're going into this issue, right? To your question earlier about sun and moon, as we mentioned earlier about when he's here on day 7 or day 8, day 7 in Jerusalem, day 8 in Mount Zion, a type of New Jerusalem, when he makes the moon confounded or blush or makes the sun ashamed because he's that bright, gloriously shining from the heavens. What? Because remember, he rules both of them, but he reigns from the earth in day 7. But he goes up to the heavens, and remember the angels, the ladder that Jacob saw, the angels going back and forth. That was a type of Christ going back and forth from day 7. He goes into the heavens because he rules heavens and earth, but he reigns from his father David's throne. But let's go into Isaiah 60. Watch this.
Now the earth, back to the earth doesn't move in day 7.
No.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, he's making it back to a different place again, which is rather interesting. So in Isaiah chapter 60, verse 19, watch this. So he says this. Isaiah 60, verse 19 and 20. The sun will be no more the light by day, neither for brightness shall the moon give light unto you, but the Lord shall be unto you an everlasting light, as thy God and glory. The sun will no more go down, verse 20. Neither shall the moon withdraw itself, for the Lord shall be thine everlasting light. All the days of thy mourning shall be ended. Then in verse 21 and 22, he says, and thy people also shall all the righteous shall inherit. This is day 9 at this point, verse 21 and 22. They shall all inherit the right, and then forever the land, the branch of my planting, the works of my hands, that I may be glorified. The little one shall become 1,000, and the strong nation, and I, the Lord, shall hasten in his time. So, what's he say here? This is interesting. What? He says in verse 60, the sun will no more be the light by day, and the moon will no more give the light by night. Are they still there? Yes. He didn't say they were gone. He just said they won't be there anymore.
There'll still be seasons, too, in day 7.
Yes.
Yeah.
There has to be seasons because he says, I'm going to get to that right over here, actually. I'll show you.
Even though the earth, it's interesting, the earth won't move, but there will be seasons. Where before, the earth didn't move and there weren't seasons, but now the earth won't move and there won't be seasons.
Now, so to your point, let's go to Psalm. Watch this. Go to Psalm. Is there, yes, question?
Todd said, so we will see the planets as objects, but they will not give their light, correct?
Correct. So in day 8, you'll see the planets as giving objects, but you will not see them moving. That's what you're asking me? Is that what you said? Sorry.
They will not give their light.
Not give their light. Yes, sorry. Yes. Yes, that's correct. So in verse, Psalm 89, verse 29 and 37. Let's watch this. Psalm 89, verse 29. His seed also will I make to, this is, by the way, going back to context here. So let's go back to the Holy One of Israel, verse 18. He's talking about Israel, and to, obviously, in verse 26, he shall cry unto me, thou art my Father, and my God, the rock of my salvation. I will make him to be my firstborn, higher than the kings of the earth. My mercy I'll keep for him forever, and my covenant, this is verse 28, shall stand fast with him. His seed also will I make set forever, as his throne, it's about Christ, as the days of heaven. You see how he's numbering heaven's days? His throne as the days of heaven, meaning his days on the earth in day 7 are numbered. Okay? Christ will not be, the days of heaven are numbered where his throne will be, not only on this earth, but in the heaven also. Remember when Christ reigns from Jerusalem and from Mount Zion, the days he reigns from there are numbered. Because why? After day 7, new earth. After day 8, new heaven. Well, that means he's gonna depart, remember? So remember, he's going to be, let me make sure I understand. Let me show you this for a second. Let me put earth right here. Let's put earth here for a second. So we're going to say there's the firmament of the heavens.
Guess there'll be no night in day 7? At least as we know night now?
There'll be, not as we know it now.
Yeah.
Be different. It'll be as we know it now. But there'll still be a darkness, but not as we know it now. So there'll be a firmament. What was the firmament?
Todd said, is that a heavenly Jerusalem?
I'm not sure which one you're talking about. Oh, which? Oh, the days. I'm going to show you in a second. I'm going to show you right here. So, all right. So God's. So you got this. And you have a firmament. Remember, this is a. So a firmament, from which is the firmament of the heavens, the water, firmament of the earth, and so on. So now, when he says, and he says, his seed I will make to endure forever, and his throne as the days of the heavens. So these heavens will come to an end, the end of day 8. They're gone. So what happens? The throne of God, the throne of Christ, goes from here, which is in the heavens here, and it's also on the earth, and he goes over here, and he goes outside of time, as we know before, which he does in the past. I can't even draw this anymore. What's wrong with me? So now he's outside of time. So remember, it says in the book of Peter, 1 Peter chapter 3 and verse 10, that the heavens are withdrawn. So he takes the heavens and they're withdrawn, he says. So it's withdrawn. He says the word withdrawn. It says pass away. It means withdrawn. So he's withdrawn. I'm going to rewrite it. So to the point here when he says in verse 29 of Psalm 89, Psalm 89, verse 29, his seed I will make to forever, and his throne in the days of the heavens. If his children forsake my law, and walk not in my judgments, if they break my statutes and keep my commandments, and keep not my commandments, then will I visit their transgression with the rod and iniquity with stripes. Verse 33 of Psalm 89. Nevertheless, my loving kindness will I not utterly take from him, nor suffer my faithfulness to fail. My covenant will I not break. Now watch this now, this is interesting. I will not break my covenant, nor alter the thing that has gone out of my lips. Once I have sworn by my holiness that I shall not lie unto David. He's talking about David here, right? So because that's the throne of his father David he's talking about earlier in verse 29. So his seed shall endure forever, and his throne as the sun before me. It shall be established forever as the moon, as a faithful witness in the heavens. Do you see? This is interesting. So the word forever or eternal, by the way, I did look these words up, and it's rather interesting. Because when you see this phrasing here, you're going to see how he basically has a nature of showing us that God's going to. Okay, so he's going to withdraw the heavens. But I just got finished reading. What did I just read? I was going to show you. Okay, so he says in verse 36 and 37, his seed will endure forever. His throne is the sun before me, and established forever as the moon, as the faithful witness. So he's telling you that the heavens will have light in day 9. We know that. But there's no more darkness. So the sun and the moon, as he says, before him, the reality is the sun and the moon, remember, the new heavens take place at the end of day 8. The sun and the moon they're like changed forever at that point. But he said the throne of the father David will actually, he says that the son, that as his throne, his seed will endure forever as his throne, as the sun before me, it shall be established forever as the moon, as the faithful witness in the heavens. So there's a faithful witness in the heavens, but we know that this witness goes away when there's a new heavens made. So you're like, well, remember, he already told you before that he's going to be, he already told you before that there's going to be, in day 8, the moon's going to be blushed and the sun's going to be ashamed. He already told you that. So you're like, well, okay. And that's leading up to the fact that he's going to make a new heavens. So he's not finished saying his seed, though, will be as the sun before me. The throne on the earth, because here's going to happen. What's going to happen? Because the sun reigns on the earth in day 7. The Father reigns on day 8. Does either one of them reign after that on the earth? No. And by the way, you go, wait a second. Remember what he said. He said, his seed shall endure forever, and his throne as the sun before me. So as the sun and before him, by the way, that word forever means, there's a phrasing that in time, out of time, it's relevant to the time God's talking about. So he's saying that the sun and moon, as long as it's around, well then yeah, it's not going to, but the new heavens comes into play for day 8. What a coincidence. That's when New Jerusalem leaves, and that's when the Father's done reigning. The Son already reigned on the earth, and he's gone into the heavens. The Father leaves there into day 8. He's gone into the heavens. So there's no more. Earlier when he said the throne will be on the earth, and he says, once I have sworn my holiness that will not lie there, his seed will endure forever, and his throne as the sun. His throne won't go beyond, the throne of Father David won't go beyond here. It stops there. It's done. There's no more need for that.
At the end of day 7.
No, day 8. At the end of day 8. End of day 8, there'll be no more throne of Father David, because there'll be no more fulfilling anymore of this need to do that. So, for example, so I'm going to go over to, let's go back to, let me see here. I have a note in my scripture to tell you something here. My neck hurts. Sorry. Okay. So let's go back to 2 Peter. So I was showing you in 2 Peter chapter 3. So in verse 10. So I hope that makes sense what I'm saying to you. I'll erase this and say this another way. I'm going to say it another way so you can see what I'm saying. So I said it that way. I'm going to say it a different way so you can see more clearly, because I know sometimes it's hard to follow my verbal ridiculousness. So, okay, so day 7 comes about, right? So the sun and moon have lesser light. We know that, right? We know that to be the case. Sun and moon, lesser light. We know that. Right? So we see this here. Then we go, and that goes into day 8, and he says the throne of Father David. I shouldn't even put this here. Just continue this on. So, boom, right? So then you have day 9. Now you have a new heavens. You have a whole new heavens now. It's a different reality now. So if you go to Jeremiah, for example, go to Jeremiah in chapter 31. Go to Jeremiah in chapter 31 and verse 36. He says in chapter 31, verse 35, and we read, "Thus saith the Lord, which giveth the sun for a light by day, and the ordinance of the moon and of the stars for a light by night, which divides the sea from then the waves that roar. The Lord of hosts is his name. If those ordinances depart or remove from before me, saith the Lord, then the seed of Israel also shall cease." By the way, this word for seed means offspring. "From being a nation from before me," and it says forever. That's a bad translation. It should say for all the days, for the days that are left. So then in verse 37, thus saith the Lord, if heaven can be measured, and the fountains of the earth stretched out beneath, I will also cast off the seed of Israel for all they have done, saith the Lord. But obviously he's not going to do that, right? But go back, let me show you in Genesis chapter 12, verse 1 and 2, this word for nation. So the first time it comes up, Genesis chapter 12, as we know, remember, we use the word nation to speak of a country. That's not what God's talking about. In Genesis chapter 12, verse 2, I will make of thee a great nation, a gom, and I will bless thee, and I'll make thy name great. What did God make Abram into? A Hebrew. Because the nation is an ethnicity of a group, a culture, right? Look in Genesis chapter 35, verse 11. Watch this. 35, verse 11. The thing with Jacob wrestling with God. What did God say to him? God said in verse 11 of Genesis 35, and God said, or Elohim said unto him, and I am God Almighty. Be fruitful and multiply. A nation and a company of nations shall be of you. Because why? Because out of Israel will come also the Moabites and the Ammonites, and all this came out of them. But the mighty nation, Israel, came from him. And they will also get proliferated through other half-breeds of Jewish people throughout there. But you have a nation being demarcated as a line of ethnicity of the Jewish people. But going back to Jeremiah 31, I'm going to go back and read that again. So the ethnicity is what's in view there of their distinguishment amongst all the people. So were they always distinguished as a people? No. Who distinguished them? God. Did they themselves have intrinsically a distinguishing nature? No. God made them distinguished. So in Jeremiah 31, 31 in verse 36, when he says, if these ordinances of the sun and moon, if they remove from me, saith the Lord, then the seed or the offspring of Israel shall cease from being a nation before me for all the days that are left. So when you read it differently, see, it makes it sound like they're never going to ever end. What he's talking about is this, that when the sun and moon, the ordinance will stop from before him, and when they do, then the seed of Israel will no longer be an ethnic group of distinction, which means, what I'm trying to say to you is this, in day 9, there's going to be no distinction anymore, no distinction of Jew and Gentile. No more. It's over. He just said that. He said when the sun and moon are in ordinance, then they're always going to remain an ethnic people, a nation, an ethnicity of people. But when they stop, that stops. He didn't say it that way, but that's what he's saying, right? He says there's only a distinction when the sun and moon are in play. As soon as they're no longer in play, well, then that stops. Right? So he's telling you in day 9, when it stops, new heaven, there's no more distinction. You say, what does that look like? I don't understand. Is God going to turn his back on the Jews? No. You don't understand. He's not going to turn his back on the Jews. He's just going to love on them, but no longer show them as a distinct. There's no longer a need for a distinct ethnicity anymore. Why, do you say? Because on the earth in the new heavens, you're going to have the Ezekiel 37 thing going on, right? The valley of dry bones. And they're going to have soulical bodies. They're going to have bodies of flesh and bone and no blood. And they're going to be the meek who inherit the earth. They're going to be the meek. They're not going to be known as the Israelites or the Hebrews or the Jews. They're going to be known as the meek because there's no nations anymore. There's no more ethnicity. It doesn't matter anymore. It doesn't matter. Why does it matter? Because what matters now is the body that you have is what makes you distinguished. And now those who are in the lake of fire, well, I shouldn't put it over the both. Those who are in the lake of fire from day 8, those who had their part, right? So they come out and they have flesh, blood, and bone. But they have no sin. Now everything that has blood has death. Until now. Because there's no more sun. There's no more moon. There's no more sin around you. There's no elements outwardly, heavenly, earthly that's going to create any death. Nothing. So these people will be the underlings to these people, which they won't be known as Jews. They'll be known as the meek with solical bodies who can do like Christ did and walk through walls and transport themselves. Whereas those in flesh and blood and bone will be like you and me, but without sin. And they're going to be on the earth in day 7. They won't see themselves as Jew and Gentile. They'll just see themselves as, well, those guys have different bodies than I do. I know they're the ones who rule the show here. I'm just under them. But they're going to be content.
They're not the mark of the beast.
No.
The lake of fire, the ones in the lake of fire are which ones? Exactly?
Those are people that are in Christ. These are in Christ people that were disobedient. So people from Gehenna here and Hades who remain disobedient, then they go here to have their part in the lake of fire. And then when that's done, they go out here. And they're under these solical body people. Does that make sense? Answer your question? Yeah. That's what happens. So when he's talking about the sun, so what I'm saying to you is the sun and moon, I can't see declaratively where they no longer are not around, but I do see declaratively where their light no longer is relevant. That I do see. So I cannot say definitively that they themselves as objects are no longer existing. It makes me believe that because of a new heaven, because I do in fact see where their light becomes less needed. So if it's less needed during day 8, why would you need it at all in day 9 when there's a new heaven? I'm just using common sense and saying, look, if prior to the new heavens, he's telling you it's lesser light needed from them, why would you need them at all? You know what I'm saying?